This is the Lutron Caseta Smart Dimmer Switch, and today I'm going to review it. Hey folks, welcome back to Tech and More Tech. My name is Carlo, and if you're new to the channel, I post smart home videos every weekend covering all aspects of the smart home. If that's something you're interested in, then consider subscribing, and if you've liked my videos in the past, go ahead and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. As always, if you prefer a written version, head on over to techandmoretech.com, link in the description below. The Lutron Caseta light switch is one of the most versatile smart dimmers on the market. Not only does it not require a neutral wire, it also integrates into all three major ecosystems: HomeKit, Amazon, and Google. While it may appear more expensive than some of the competitors, it is definitely a case of you get what you pay for, as the Lutron Caseta is considered the gold standard of smart switches and dimmers. Lutron was kind enough to provide me with their starter kit and motion sensor to review, though there is no contract requiring me to say anything in particular, and as always I will give an honest review. We'll start with an unboxing and get it set up, go over the app, talk about the accessories, ecosystem, integrations, speed and reliability, and then finally whether or not it is worth it. So let's get started. The starter kit comes with three devices: the smart dimmer, the Lutron hub, and a Pico remote. There's usually a power supply cable and all that kind of stuff as well. Right off the bat, I would much prefer that they transition to a more paper-based packaging, not only for environmental reasons, but also because the plastic is rather annoying to get opened up. I suppose on the flip side, no one will be able to sell you a used product. If you haven't installed a smart switch before, or any sort of switch or dimmer, then there are detailed instructions on how to do so. It's very straightforward, but if you don't feel comfortable doing it, you can always hire an electrician to do it for you. Disclaimer, I am not an electrician and I take no responsibility if anything goes wrong for you. Before we jump into the installation, I want to touch on the hub. Most hub-based devices use Zigbee and maybe Z-Wave, which is why they require a hub. Usually if you have something like SmartThings or Home Assistant set up, that can act as a hub for you for all your smart home devices, and you can get away with just buying individual devices instead of kits. Lutron does not use either of those two protocols, so they must use their own hub. They use a proprietary connection protocol called Clear Connect. Now, I would usually be annoyed by this. Ugh, another damn hub. Why can't they just use Zigbee like everyone else, or Wi-Fi, blah blah blah. However, with Lutron I didn't go through that phase because of their reputation. Lutron isn't a middle-of-the-road electronics manufacturer that are trying to corner the smart home market and think they know what's best. Lutron's founder, Joel Spira, literally invented the dimmer switch for home use. They're one of the largest lighting companies in the world, outfitting skyscrapers and office buildings. Their Clear Connect technology works at a 400 MHz wireless spectrum, which is very low and basically empty, meaning it has little to no interference and excellent connectivity. And that brings us to reputation. You can look around online and you'll find every person praises them for their rock-solid reliability, and this is in part because of that proprietary connection and hub. For that reason, I'm okay with Lutron using its own hub and not just using Zigbee like everyone else. The only thing I wish the hub had different was power over Ethernet, though that's a minor gripe. Setup is very straightforward if you've ever installed a dimmer switch before. The only real difference between smart dimmers and smart switches compared to regular ones is they take up a lot of space. So if you are placing multiple in like a multi-gang box, it's going to be a tight squeeze. Of course, you need to turn off your circuit breaker so you don't electrocute yourself. The Lutron Caseta is one of the few smart dimmers that does not require a neutral wire, although they are getting more popular these days. This makes it a very versatile choice and a great choice for those people that live in older homes that don't have neutral wires. Unlike some of the other smart switches out there where you have to dock the existing wires into their housing, the Lutron Caseta has its own wires sort of connecting out, and you have to splice them with the existing ones using the end caps provided. The best feature in my opinion is that you don't need to figure out which wire connects to live and which one to load. The electronics inside are smart enough to figure that out, so you just need to connect the two wires with the two existing wires in your wall, and then also just the ground. If you're connecting multiple of them, you'll want to break off the tabs in order for them to fit properly, but I was only placing a single one, so it wasn't necessary for me even in this 3-switch box. Once you've got it installed, flip the breaker back on and your new Lutron dimmer should be working. All that is left is to plug in the hub and set it all up within the app. Adding the hub and the switch into the app is a very straightforward process and just includes tapping Add and then pressing the button on the back of the hub. Wait a few seconds and it's all up and running. Adding the dimmer is the same process. Select the device type that you want to add and it will prompt you to hold down the off button for 10 seconds until the lights are flashing. Choose the location of the dimmer and the name you want to associate with it. The app functionality itself is fairly basic. On the home screen, you can see all your devices, scenes, and schedules. Tapping on any of the devices brings you up their control options, which is quite straightforward for a dimmer switch. The next two accessories that were provided are the Pico remote and the motion sensor. The Pico remote is part of the starter kit and does exactly what you think a remote does. These are typically used in 2- or 3-way switches in place of multiple smart dimmers. So if you have a set of lights that are controlled from multiple locations, the smart dimmer will go in one location and the Pico remote will go in the others. Lutron also provides instructions on how to do this if that is what you are setting up. The remote uses the same Clear Connect technology to provide very fast and reliable performance. There is one major drawback in my opinion, which I will go over in just a minute. The motion sensor isn't part of the starter kit but was provided for testing as it's a common accessory, especially if you want to get started with home automations. Adding it to your setup is also very simple and straightforward, though I'm not particularly fond of it from my testing so far, and I will go into a little bit more detail later on. The Pico remote can be assigned to any device, and if you have a Sonos integration, you can actually assign it to be an audio remote, changing the tracks and adjusting the volume of your Sonos speakers, which is pretty neat. The motion sensor can have the active hours changed to determine when it will automatically turn the lights on and when it will automatically turn the lights off. The motion sensor has a weird limitation though that can only control devices that are set up in the same room within the app. So if you have a motion sensor that you want to control a hallway light and a bedroom light, it won't work. They all need to be set up in the same room within the app. This will just result in people setting up all of their devices in one generic room for maximum compatibility. Silly limitation, and I really hope they change that. A key feature of the Lutron Caseta system is that it is compatible with all major ecosystems: Apple HomeKit, Amazon Alex, Google Home, and SmartThings and Home Assistant. Adding your Lutron devices to any of these ecosystems is quite straightforward as you would expect. You can go into any of their respective apps and search for Lutron and follow the instructions, which is typically just pressing the little button on the back of the hub. On the surface, this amount of compatibility is fantastic, and to be fair, it is. And for the vast majority of people, they're not going to have any issues with it. However, if we dive a little deeper, we will soon face some roadblocks, which are the accessories. Neither the Pico remote nor the motion sensor can be used outside of Lutron's own app. Not being able to expose the remote and motion sensor to other ecosystems is a total bummer for me. The remote is fantastic in size, but the functionality is totally stifled. You can control multiple lights if you want, which is nice, but that also seems like the bare minimum in terms of functionality these days. The middle button can be used to program a scene, but it's done in such an old-fashioned way. You can set your lights to the level you want them to be, and then hold down the middle button for 6 seconds to program it to that scene. In what world is it not easier to just set the scenes in the app and then assign them to the button? Or better yet, even just have every button be able to assign a different scene. I understand this might be a little bit too much for some folks, but just having the option would be nice. If they would expose the remotes to other ecosystems, I would have them all over the place for triggering various scenes and automations for all the other smart home devices that I have. But as they currently stand, they're fine for 3-way switches, and that's pretty much it. The motion sensor has a couple of options when it comes to automating it. You can choose which time of the day the motion will turn the lights on and which time of the day it will turn the lights back off due to a lack of motion. If you're going to be fully embedded in the Lutron world, then it's fine, but I'm not terribly impressed by it. You don't have fine control over how long it waits until the lights turn back off, nor can you have it work during multiple blocks of time. Not to mention, it is hilariously large. It comes with a battery that boasts a 10-year life, which is nice, but when you compare it to something like the Wise Sense, Aqara, or even Hue motion sensors, it's just needlessly big. I would happily take 2 years of battery life and a quarter of the size. When it comes to speed and functionality of the Lutron Caseta itself, it's great. Very quick to respond from the Pico remote, from the switch, from the app, from voice assistants, and even with the motion sensor. The design is certainly unique, and I think it's a bit dividing. It provides a lot of functionality with the separate buttons and allows finer control of the dimmer, but at the same time, it takes a little bit of effort to hit the on or off button compared to like a traditional paddle style light switch or dimmer. I would say it's definitely not a deterrent, and if you're on the fence about the Lutron Caseta because of the aesthetics, I wouldn't worry about it as you get used to it very quickly. The reliability so far has been excellent, but this is obviously something you would expect to work for many years. Like I mentioned before, the reputation around the Cassette lineup is second to none, so if that's a priority for you, then that should put Lutron at the top of your list. So all of this brings us to the golden question. Should you buy the Lutron Caseta starter kit? As always, we start with the price, which is $70, though there is an alternate version that comes with a Pico remote wall bracket for $100, and the motion sensor is $50. I'll start with the motion sensor real quick and say that unless you are planning to only use the Lutron Caseta smart lighting throughout your house and you don't plan on having any other smart home devices, well then it's your only option. Other than that, I can't recommend it given its limitations and all the competition out there. As for the Caseta starter kit and the switch itself, I think it's great value at $70 and still pretty good value at $100. A dimmer and remote goes for about $55 on Amazon, which is on the more expensive side of things, but when you consider that the remote works as a three-way switch, it ends up costing similar or less than if you had to buy multiple smart dimmers from a different company. If you're only going to replace a single dimmer switch, it's admittedly a tough sell. But if you plan on outfitting the majority or entirety of your home with smart lighting, Lutron Caseta is still the gold standard in 2021. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe button for plenty more videos to come. There are links to everything I talked about down below. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below as well, and I will get to them as best I can. And until next time, see ya.